There he is.
Hey, Raymond.
8 o'clock.
Yeah,
Hope you've got, no, you're 15 seconds late.
I am 15 seconds late. Yeah, I was thinking, Ken, I was going to tell you, growing in the mountains, and I am in a small town in Cuba, that we would find common ground, in common interest. This is America, you know?
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but you know, when you think about that,
Andres, are you
Cuba-
there? Andres, are you there?
she's muted. When we think about it, Cuba is a volcanic island and it's mountainous. So
No,
you aren't as far apart as you would think.
Cuba is not a volcanic island. There are no volcanoes in Cuba.
No. I mean, the shape of all islands are volcanic in nature. And Cuba has mountains because every time I've watched the weather, they talk about how when we potentially have hurricanes, they talk about when the hurricanes pass over higher elevations in Cuba, it knocks down their energy level.
Oh, it does have mountains. I was thinking that you were talking about, you're probably right. It's probably a volcanic island, like you said, but I was thinking about something else. Cuba has no volcanoes.
Yeah, no, just
And it is not in the seismic region of the world, except when Guantanamo is right there. You have sometimes tremors, and it is actually in front of what is called the Bartlett depth. You know, it's one of the deepest places in the whole Atlantic. Kendris, are you there?
somebody's there.
Hey, yes, I'm here. I'm driving though, so I'm trying to get it all hooked up to the Bluetooth in the car.
Okay, be careful.
Where are you now?
We just passed Cookville, headed to Memphis.
Okay, then I'm going to start. I mean, in case you cannot continue, I'm going to start with my comments on the book. I'd rather have casinos. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. I just have to. I got a car full of kiddos, so I'll probably be on mute quite a bit.
Yeah, we shouldn't be asking you to multitask.
Hey, Kendris, you want to wait until next week to meet? Hello?
We can go ahead. It's either way. I won't be able to participate in the discussion much, and I know we have a couple of guys out today, so if we need to, we can. But otherwise, we can go on.
Okay. What I'm going to do, I mean, in case you get cut off or something, I'm going to mention what I think about the book. I'd rather have casinos. Can I talk to you about it?
Yeah, Ramon, we should just let her listen because she's trying to drive, so we don't need to ask for responses.
Well, I will go ahead and talk about it at the next time, okay? Because I wanted to have a discussion with her, so I will talk about that later. Now, so the next time you can meet that you're not driving. I will mention what I think about the book, okay? So right now you can concentrate on listening. Okay, I wanted to start as usually do. Today we don't have a lot. So, I mean a lot, because we really, this week is really preparing for the discussion that Bob is going to lead next week about the movie, The Two Popes, okay? So today we have 3 articles to go over. One, which is a review of Evil Geniuses, which Ken read. And I'm going to kind of talk about it, the review of Dark Money, which I read. And then we're going to talk about this article that relates how this Catholic, so-called Catholic billionaires are trying to change the shape of the Catholic Church. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So anyway, I do want to make a couple of comments, and now I want to share the screen. And the big deal is about the following. I actually want to point out two things. Okay. I'm going to talk about a couple of things. Okay. The reaction of the Republican Party, and I'm going to play a video right now. The reaction of the Republican Party to the proposals that Biden did about helping the people. They're gambling that they can use the hate of the black man to keep the white people angry, and they don't have to give them anything. So they basically, so the first thing that they did, for example, McConnell did, is all of a sudden send a letter to get rid of the 1619 project that was started by the New York Times, where actually 1619 was the first time that they brought slaves to the United States. And it kind of emphasizes the contributions of black people throughout American history. Does that make sense? So anyway, he's doing that. And what I'm gonna go ahead and I play for a minute, there's this black guy in CNN, which I think is the best commentator they have, which is called Van Jones, okay? You heard about him? Van Jones, this is what he said about what Tim Scott said, okay? Can you people see the screen?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, can you see the video?
Not yet.
How about now?
We're still seeing your document, Ramon.
How about now?
Nope.
Not yet.
Okay, something happened. Can you people still hear me there?
Be my guess.
I got disconnected somehow. Okay, this is what Van Jones said, okay? Can you people see it right now?
Yeah.
100. They took everything from me. My family.
Let me go ahead and make sure that the sound is higher. Okay, here's what Van Jones said.
I'm gonna make it right. No remorse. Tom Clancy's Without Remorse. Rated R. Now streaming only on Prime Video. 100 years ago, kids in classrooms were taught the color of their skin was their most important characteristic. And if they looked a certain way, they were inferior. Today, kids are being taught that the color of their skin defines them again. And if they look a certain way, they're an oppressor. From colleges to corporations to our culture, people are making money and gaining power by pretending we haven't made any progress at all, by doubling down on the divisions we've worked so hard to heal. You know this stuff is wrong. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country. It's backwards to fight discrimination with different types of discrimination. And it's wrong to try to use our painful past to dishonestly shut down debates in the present.
I think they were smart to put Tim Scott up there. He's sort of, the Biden of his party in that he comes across warm, authentic. He tells the stories, that kind of stuff. The problem isn't the messenger. The messenger was great, but the message was nonsense. Somehow we forgot to notice that Biden is dividing the country. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. He acts like all the division in the country, that's what he wants to talk about, is coming from one side. That doesn't make any sense. But he lost a lot of African Americans by the tens of millions when he said America is not a racist nation. Look, you can say that we're getting better. You can say that we've come a long way. But when you look at these numbers, when you look at these statistics, it is very clear that this country is still struggling with racism. We still have racism showing up in almost every institution. So I thought he did himself a disservice by jumping, that shark unnecessarily. That said, there's a reason they put him up. He's the best they've got. He can give that message. He can talk about all. He can try to polish up all of the Republican nonsense without the sharp edges, better than the rest of them. What's amazing to me is how different he sounds from all the other Republicans.
Right.
Anyway, and you put that with this thing about the reaction of what is the name? The reaction of this guy, the guy with the turtleneck, McConnell, is to write out instead of actually come up with a counter proposal or anything, is to try to attack the 1619 program as a way of getting all the white people, the poor white people or poorly educated whites, to emphasize that somehow the black people are taking over or something. Does that make sense? This is how I interpret that. Any comments from anybody?
Yeah, my comment is, I was very surprised that the attempt that Tim Scott made to deliver a message, because I agree with some of what your commentators were saying. It was very disjointed. I was actually quite in shock. What became very clear was that this message is really going to be the Republican talking points going into we're already in political war mode, and everybody's trying to figure out what the sound bites are going to be going into the midterms. And this seems to be the GOP line that they're going to take going into the midterms.
They're double down on using racism to really win. They're calculating that they can fire up all the poorly educated whites, the ones that are thinking that the blacks are taking over and all of that. And they're counting that by suppressing the vote, gerrymandering, and driving these people crazy against a white and black man, it's enough for them to win.
Well, I think they're also trying to make sure that they can maintain their foothold with the Hispanic vote.
Well, the Hispanics are not going to react to that. Let me tell you what seems to be the big deal with Hispanics. Okay, the big deal with Hispanics is the S word, socialism. Okay, a lot of people in Miami, and come from Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba,
Right.
and you are able to connect measures to help people with socialism. The Cubans in Miami are going to freak out, and they're concentrating on working and all that, so they're going to be that. And the other thing is, there are some people, from what I understand, there's some people, Hispanics and even some blacks, that share Trump's view that you have to be macho. You have to be macho and all of that. And some of them got attracted from what I see, the way, Trump, does this and does that. So there is a little bit of machismo among Hispanics that seems to be a motivator. But I thought, basically, that's what I thought. Kendrice, can you hear us?
She's on mute. She's trying to drive.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, then I want to comment on the book that you gave me to read. I had a very negative opinion of the book. I rather we had casinos, okay? And I only read about 2 hours, an hour and a half of it. And I think the book is actually very damaging to the blood cause. And here's the main reasons. First of all, I think he's trying to undermine the credibility of black leaders. And how they're self-appointed. All leaders are self-appointed, no matter whether they're black or white. They go to a church and they talk, and all of a sudden, slowly, They keep getting people. That's the way Martin Luther King. And the guy's making comments that all these black leaders, nobody elected them. And they're basically, nobody elected them. And they're trying to speak for black people and exaggerating about the black people. The other thing that I really didn't like is his attack on the concept of African Americans. The book Cast mentions that when people out there think of an American, they think of somebody who's white with blue eyes. And for a long time, when you thought about somebody being white, American, people thought of a white American who kind of had parents from Europe and all of that. So coming up with the concept of African American was a very, very important move in getting the country to start thinking of black people as Americans, okay? And I think that those two things, maybe you didn't interpret it that way, but I think there will be, if I interpret it that way, there will be other people who will interpret it my way. Okay, maybe you didn't, Ken didn't interpret it that way, maybe you didn't interpret it that way. The other comment that I want to make is that every race group that has had discrimination tends to create certain mechanisms to harden their skin. For example, Jews make jokes about themselves, and it's a way of hardening themselves. Okay, there is trash talk and your mama jokes and all kinds of things like that that people have, and there are books and things that Cubans have where we laugh at ourselves. Okay. We laughed at ourselves, but we wouldn't want anybody else to actually laugh at us. We just do it ourselves, okay? And there might be some things among black people that they just kind of kid around to talk themselves. But this book, when it is actually read by white people who have a tendency to be racist, becomes a tool for them to continue minimizing blacks and their movement. That's my thinking. And I don't know, Ken may have had a different opinion or a different interpretation of what I had of the book. What do you think, Ken or Paul?
There's another way of looking at it. I don't know, but the three books we read prior to the time we read them, we'd have probably said, we're not racist. We've never done anything that could be considered remotely racist. And after we read it, we had to rethink that. And this book, the title to me says a lot. You think it's a big deal because you have Black History Month or something like that, and that makes you feel good, but it doesn't amount to a hill of beans in terms of what the real problems are. Access to educational opportunities and to jobs and those kinds of things. And making it funny, I thought made it an interesting way to look at it. He might have had a good point talking about the black leaders. I don't know. Are they actually accomplishing anything other than getting their face on the TV a lot? I don't know.
Well, here's the way, first of all, when I said my comment, I said that some people are going to interpret it the way I did. I didn't say that's the only interpretation.
Yeah.
And I didn't say.
Hey, I like what you said about, your interpretation. I prefaced this book with, it was written by a comedian. So he's going to have that comedic relief in there, but he really speaks to some of the truths in the African-American community. After MLK, after Malcolm X, people are looking for this amazing leader, and really kind of having this Messiah attitude towards leadership that's just not happening. And so, what he's saying in that is, these leaders are, like Ken said, they're just up there, they're figureheads. They're not in the trenches, they're not working, they're not organizing in the ways that our parents and grandparents would recognize. And that's still, even to this day, with the Black Lives Matter movement, no one, has risen to say, we're going to be these organizers and we're going to have a strong presence and we're going to have a character that every generation of Africans in America can get behind. And, you mentioned, calling the name the African American. When you think of it, globally, we're Black. African American has no bearing. Until I open my mouth, I don't care where I go. They don't know where I'm from, what language I speak or anything. I'm just Black. And so what we've been seeing lately is this identification with Black and with Blackness, because it is, you have amnesty internationally with being Black. And because there are so many hardships in America and some of the countries that we live in or throughout the diaspora, there's this sense of community and this connection with being Black. We're not really a minority globally. We're a minority in the places that we are in the diaspora. So, he really attacks that term because it's just another term for acceptance in America, when that really isn't. It perpetuates the stereotype that we're still an other. We're not Americans. Like, French people, they're French. I don't care if they're Black, white, whatever. They're French. But in America, we don't have that. We have this separate designation of being African American. And so, you have this feeling that, we're Africans in America. And really getting back to the culture and to the heritage of being African. And I have my husband here too. What do you think about it? Come on, comment. What do you think? Because we disagree a lot, so I'm interested to see what you think.
No comment. I'm just listening for now.
Come on. So that's where I'm at, Ramon. That was my take on that.
Okay, here's my point, okay? I mean, I kind of gather a little bit of what you said, okay, too, okay? And I didn't say the book is worthless. And I really, I mean, you helped me right now understand one of his points, that there is, no matter where you go, they think of you as being Black primarily than being American or something else. But the problem, my comment was that I'm afraid that book can serve as a tool to racists, okay? And that's my concern. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of like a book that I would have liked that only Black people can read it. You see what I'm saying? Because I think other people would actually, racists would look at that book and come out of there minimizing Black leaders and minimizing the affect, so, and I'm not saying this is the only interpretation. I'm thinking that some people might actually feel about the book that way, not everyone.
Another way to look at it is to look at it the way a lot of business writers write. They say, don't confuse activity with progress. It's, if you want to point to something that could be called progress, probably what happened in Georgia in the last election, that might be considered progress. They actually were able to organize and determine the outcome of the election there. So
I haven't read the book. I haven't read this book, but the fact that it's written with a humorous tone, the fact that it's obviously crafted from a Black perspective, I think it'll be informative. The high level idea that we'd rather have casinos is just absolutely humorous. If you think about it, casinos were the part of the remedy for a lack of equity with American Indians. And I don't know if you've been to any Indian reservations that happen to be blessed with a casino, but in general, they're doing a lot better off than in places where there are no casinos. So I thought that was, I think, from that perspective, that the book sounds interesting, but I haven't
Yeah,
had
I
a chance
mean, but saying, don't give us words and
Yeah.
empty
give us results.
expressions of support. Let's see
Give us
some action.
results.
Let's see something that has economic consequences.
Yeah. No, I mean, I grew up in a small town in eastern Connecticut, and the local Indian tribe there was a reservation, I don't know, 5-6 miles from my house. And the Indians there were dirt poor, you know, I can't even describe that I ever really interacted with them. But what I do recall was one thing. They had their own recreational area, their own swimming hole, and they opened it to the public. So even though it was on the reservation, people were allowed there to go there and swim, which I did on more than one occasion. So some of the people I was swimming with were obviously Indians. They opened their facility. Now they have a casino. And whatever wasn't there before, the first time I happened to be visiting my hometown and went to the casino, you wouldn't recognize the place. And they're absolutely, it's an area of great prosperity, and the people there have benefited immensely. So I can see the Black perspective, you know, forget about the incremental. Let's just give us reparations in the form of the rights to run our own casinos. And maybe that's the shortcut.
Yeah, one comment, Kendris and Ken, I mean, your comments have helped me uh, understand the book better. And I'm going to think about it because I may have oversimplified things. But I still think that there is an element that this book could be used against Blacks by some people. I mean, I don't say everybody. I think the comments that both of you made, Ken and Kendris made, are pretty subtle. They're really subtle points that a casual reader might not. Now, one other comment. I was thinking a little bit about people like Bill Maher and a lot of the people. I mean, those people, the way they make money by saying something that is obvious and make you feel that you're a genius because you agree with them. And Bill Maher's point is that you always say those people are silly because they don't do these, they don't do that, they don't do that. And you come out of there thinking, he's right and I agree with him, so I'm a great person. And if you look at the first page of that book, he says that one of the people who liked it is Bill Maher. And that to me is a concern because I think Bill Maher is, I used to like him a lot, but I think he is a person that is doing a lot of harm. Okay, in my opinion. But
well, I don't think we have to worry about the Republicans picking someone else's book and using it as a tool because they just make their shit up and use it as a tool. I mean, they don't have to go through the effort of finding someone's scholarly attempt at internal evaluation. They don't have to go that far. They just make their shit up. Excuse my language. And what was I going to say to go with that? I think there's a whole. I think what passes for journalism, both in in printed media and a lot of the televised programs, there's a I don't know what the right word is. I consider it a charade in that the writer or the speaker very slowly, teasingly brings the reader along with bits and pieces of ideas so that the viewer, not reader, whatever you want to label it, the consumer of the content gets to have the aha moment to make the connections, which everybody that knows anything probably already knew were there. And in empowering the viewer in that way, they create loyalty, and within the viewership, they create this false idea that I'm really smart and if I can keep up with the arguments in the media, that proves I'm smart. It's a whole game. It's a whole way that media is gaming the public in a lot of ways. I think it's kind of unfortunate, and I think it's a problem not just in horrific media like Fox News. I think it's a problem in all media at some level. I think it's I think it's a mechanism to improve subscription rates. I think it's not going away.
Okay, by the way, Paul, I think you made a really good point. I mean, your point is that there's so many other things to give the Republicans a shit. So this book is actually in the rounding error. So it's not going to make it's not really going to make anything because they have bigger ways of getting people to believe the shit. So, I mean, so my concern is really worrying about, a rounding error, and, so.
I don't think the Republicans would highlight this because in doing so it would help the author. That's not their game.
Okay, I was thinking, by the way, can we finish this topic?
Sure.
Anyway, I was thinking about doing something right now, and both of you and Bobby and Chuck come to ethics from the point of view of religion, okay? And I want you to go very quickly about what my approach to ethics is. Can you people read that?
Yeah.
Okay. I have, first of all, one of my principles that I have to be brutally honest about myself. And in particular, resist any temptation to see myself as a hero. That somehow I did more than everybody else, and so I deserve more and all of that. And, so the other thing that I want to work on is what I call the cultivation of empathy, compassion, and the understanding of what is fair and just. And I was not able to cry until I was about a junior in Florida State. I was about something like 20, 23. I don't remember ever crying in my life. And I remember thinking that I had to work on the ability to cry. And, and I succeeded. And maybe I went overboard because now I cry all the time when I see a television and all that. But I want to really go ahead and work on having so much empathy that whenever I see somebody else facing injustice and cruelty, it brings tears to my eyes. Okay, I cry. I wanted my empathy and compassion to be so intense that I cry. Okay, and the other thing that I want to do is the following: is that I want to make sure that whenever I have a moral quandary, I do not give any preference to myself. If I'm having a deal with somebody else, I'm not going to try to get better from the other guy because of me, okay? And a lot of these, by the way, came to me from Buddhism, because Buddhism emphasizes the cultivation of compassion, okay? And the next thing that I want people to understand is that my approach is the following. I want to go ahead and cultivate compassion and empathy. And the way that I try to become better at doing that is, one of the things that I do is I use the philosophers to guide me in understanding what is true compassion and empathy. And for example, this notion of cruel and unusual punishment, in the Middle Ages, people burned people at the stake and they thought it was a big deal. The person who came up with the idea that cruel and unusual punishment didn't come from Christianity. It came from Voltaire, Montesquieu, and this guy called the Beccaria, which I'm going to go ahead and give you a link of now, so you understand. Can you people see Beccaria? They're right there, or not? Can you see the?
Yeah, we can see it.
So anyway, he was the guy who spearheaded the notion that cruel and unusual punishment was bad, and he argued that one of the things that it did is that if you have that kind of thing, it desensitizes society against the suffering of others, okay? So that was one of his arguments. So I depend on philosophy a lot to guide how to exercise compassion and empathy. And for example, in the Middle Ages, under Christianity, cruelty to animals was for fun. In the Middle Ages, we had something called bear biting, in which they had a bear, they took his nails off and their teeth off, and people would have a good fun seeing dogs attacking the bear. In the Middle Ages, they loved to have parties and light, go ahead and set cats on fire and see them run away. One of the things they did in the Middle Ages is they would get a cat and nail it to the door, and you have to kill it with your forehead. And Jeremy Bentham came up with this statement. Jeremy Bentham was a British philosopher, and he said, the question is not can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer? And that was the beginning of the modern animal rights movement. So you can see that you're getting a lot of moral movement by listening to the philosophers, okay? So I believe that a lot of the progress in being more human and all that comes from the philosophers, not from Christianity anymore. At one time, Christianity came up with some ideas that were kind of important, and everybody's the same in the eyes of God, but it really is not doing its job anymore. Countries like the Scandinavian countries that are post-Christianity have people that are more just than anybody else. So my other point is that it doesn't matter what you believe. The most important is the cultivation of the virtues and the avoidance of the vices, as Aristotle and the Stoics would say. So in other words, virtues is, if you look at empathy and being just and all of that, the virtues can be deduced from that. Or there's things that make you cruel to others, or the things that make you lack of empathy and the avoidance of the vices. Or in other words, an emphasis on conduct over belief. I don't care what you believe in Jesus Christ or whatever. I mean, I don't care what you believe in, or you believe in the sun, or I don't care, as long as you act right. I mean, that's good enough for me. One other tool that I use is loving kindness meditation, which is I learned from the Buddhist. Every day I do an exercise trying to cultivate empathy and compassion for my wife, which I try to expand to somebody neutral. So I do use the Buddhist idea. And then, of course, I try to use positive psychology to control my temptations. Now, this is my ideal. I'm not saying that I do this, okay? But people have a Christian view. I just wanted to understand that my view is not Christian. It is a different construct. Okay, so I thought that would be useful for you to understand that as we discuss next week how Bobby is going to discuss that kind of thing. Does anybody have any comments about these points that I made? I'm not saying that's the only right way. I'm just saying this is the way that I approach what you might want to call my spiritual growth, which to me is the cultivation of empathy, compassion, and a sense of fair play. Any comments on this? Was this a little bit useful or not?
Oh yeah, I think I think you have a well-founded approach. It seems to make perfect sense. There's a harmony in the way you approach it. I think we could all learn something from it.
Okay, I wanted to go ahead and talk about it. 3 quotes that I thought were very important. Okay, one of them is I wanted to go ahead and have a quote from Seneca. Okay? Seneca said, religion is regarded by the common person as true, by the wise as false, and by the ruler useful. And the more strenuous things that religion has, the easier it is to manipulate. And I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, the priest did everything possible to make me guilty about masturbation. And they get all these kids guilty, teenagers guilty about masturbation. Why do they do that? Well, if you're a kid, you don't do any sins, okay? You don't do anything bad, but they want to make sure that you get the habit of going for confession. Confession was very important in the Middle Ages because every time there was going to be a peasant revolt, people would go ahead and confess, tell the priest, and the priest would run out and tell the king. So, basically, or if you get a rule that it's wrong to have sex before marriage and all of that, well, you got a bunch of strenuous things that manipulators can use to get people to go, to take their eyes away from the central idea of Christianity, which is that you have to have, compassion for other people. See, so the more complex a religion is, the more strenuous factors. Now, recently I read an article in the New York Times about all these people that got messed up because there was an evangelical movement about keeping yourself, be a virgin until you got married. And they have all kinds of things going on. And it's so hard to do that there's these support groups now of people who are messed up because of that evangelical movement. But you see, the article we read today about Catholicism and all, it's got all kinds of stuff that the manipulators can use to say, the big deal is sex before marriage. So they're using that to distract people from justice. So the more complex a religion is, and the next point is a quote from Weinberg, which is this Nobel Prize in Physics. And I talked about this with Chuck. So I'm talking about the big idea is that good people will do good things, bad people will do bad things, but to get common people, good people to do bad things, you need religion. And when I say religion, I include there things like communism, because Buddhism doesn't have God, but we call it a religion. But basically an ideology. Communism was a religion. They had the commissars that were like priests, and you were supposed to die for communism and all that. And ideology and religion is the same thing. Okay, it's the same thing for practical purposes. You're going to get people to do bad things. You get them a religion or an ideology, like you get this ideology, conservatism in the United States, and you get people to get that stuff, and you get them to do evil things. And I mentioned that to Chuck. Chuck made a comment that his brother was a good guy, and he went ahead, and he was a good guy, and he did everything to become an evangelical, and even though he believes all the stuff about black people and all of that, and I told him on the phone, listen, the reason your brother is doing evil things is because he became an evangelical. It's not in spite of being an evangelical, but because he became an evangelical. Does that make sense? So this is my point of view. And anyway, those are two, this is the way I think and I see the world. I'm not saying this is the only way to see the world, but if it wasn't for evangelical, I doubt that all those poor whites would actually, and you know where the religion came from? The religion came from the belief that the religion came out as a resistance to the educated. They people, the preachers and all that, they were requiring college education, and they say, we don't want a college education. Now, there are religions that are very good. For example, the black Christianity, and I read a lot about it, and the black Christianity, and I read a documental, I saw a documental here, it is actually a perfect example of how to use resilience training. You look at how you cultivate resilience, all of those things are elements of the black church, including one of the things of resilience is to find a reason for hope. And, you're going to go to heaven and God is going to do these. Blacks were very powerless. So if you have no power, you cannot effect revenge. So the only thing you can do is forgive. If you don't forgive, you go crazy. So the black churches actually, help black people cope with the kind of misery they had. So not all religions are bad. I see the black churches as being an incredible example of how to use religion for positive things. But I believe the other way goes around. White evangelical Christianity is an example how you can use religion to get people to act as evil people. Anyway, that was my discharge, and I don't have anything else to do. Okay. Any comments on what I said? My feeling is that our discussion is not a church. It's about, we're not here to make ourselves look good. It's to challenge the way we think about the world. Okay, so that's why I thought this was a useful thing. Anyway, I don't have anything else to do. We can go.
Yeah, Ramon, I'm reading a book right now by this nun, Benedictine nun from Spain.
Oh, yeah.
She's a medical doctor. She's also got a PhD in public health. And she's also, I think, has a PhD in theology. And she's written a book, and I just started reading it. But while you were talking about how different things can be used as a religion, science falls into that category too. I mean, the big pharma that she writes about have
What's the name of the book, Ken?
damn, let me see.
Ken, she's not a Spanish nun that is actually creating anti-vaxxer. She's not the same one.
Well, see, that's, the church, if you question the church, you're automatically a heretic.
Right.
But if you're a scientist and you have a PhD in public health and a medical degree, and you question some of the things that go on in the pharmaceutical industry, the media and the politicians on both sides of the aisle are all over you. And one of the reasons is because they get a lot of their money from that industry. It's the most profitable industry in the country, even more profitable than banking. And some of the things they do are just inexcusable, just morally corrupt. And she points that out. But it's real easy just to dismiss those people. And she could say, well, she does. Why don't you share your data with us? Oh, no, we can't do that.
No, I agree. By the way, the kind of things that the human weaknesses that have led to people use religion in the wrong way, these human weaknesses can be used to create.
Use science. Use anything. Right.
There's actually a name for that. It's called scientist.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm not saying this is the only way. Have you people ever heard about a book called Darwin's Cathedral? Can you people heard about that?
No.
Okay. Supposedly, the reason why Homo sapiens was able to get rid of the Neanderthals.
Let me interrupt just a minute. Faith and Freedom is the title of that book. And the author is Teresa Forcades, Forcades.
Thanks.
Okay, well, anyway, can you send me that via email so I can take a look at it?
The link to the book?
Something like that, something about the book.
Yeah.
So I can try to find a review.
Well, there was an article about her in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I read the article, but I'm not sure it's the same person. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's the same person because, but anyway, the the reason why Homo sapiens were able to wipe out the Neanderthals and the Neanderthals were bigger is that Homo sapiens were able to coordinate 2,000 people. Okay, monkeys can only be in bands of 100 and all that. And they claim, this book claims that the reason why human beings can, no human beings, Homo sapiens can actually organize in big groups is because they can believe in things that are not true together. So you go ahead and get a bunch of people to think of themselves as being Christian, and all of a sudden they feel together. And you got somebody to feel that they're really the descendants of the sun gods or something, and all of a sudden they can do. So basically, religion acted is what made humans act sometimes as bees. You see what I'm saying? So the book says we're 90% mammals and 10% bees. And the fact that unifies us as common good and doing things and binds us together is religion. So religion is what we have to do to evolve. And over time, you need religion. Okay, that's one of the reasons, by the way, that you're not going to get rid of religion because people need it. And all that a person can do who is wise is you take Christianity, the Bible. You can find in the Bible God telling the Israelites to commit genocide. And you can find anything in the Bible. So what you do is you find what is right and wrong, the writers and the movies and the philosophers and all that, and then you get the religious to pay attention to the right parts of the Bible because everything is there. You can find anything. You can get people to pay attention to the parable of the Good Samaritan, and you can get people to pay attention to the parable of the talents, and you end up with two different ways of Christianity. Does that make sense? I don't know. This is my prejudice. Okay. Anyway, are we ready to kind of talk quickly about the two articles that we have? Maybe Ken, you can talk about the article about evil geniuses.
Okay. The short version of it is in sometime probably in the 70s, or certainly by the time Reagan came into office, something happened as productivity in industry increased and profits increased. That stopped translating into better wages for the working class. So the gap between working class and the rich widened. The working class found themselves in a situation where they could not aspire to having a lifestyle comparable to their parents. And so at that same time, there were a lot of CEOs and businessmen. Koch brothers would be one example, who realized they could make a lot more money if they had lower taxes, if they had less regulation, if they were free to pretty much do what they wanted to do. And they used their wealth to buy influence with politicians. And the guy, Eric Anderson, says, this happened with the Republicans, but the media and the Democrats were very willing dupes. That, they didn't really challenge that. And, they also voted for bank bailouts and unnecessary wars and all of these things. And they were all under the influence of lobbyists. And this book I'm reading now has probably given some of the best examples of that. For example, imagine if the federal government paid a drug company to develop an AIDS vaccine or an AIDS antiviral, which they did, and then the drug company gets the patent on that medicine, and through influence of legislation and everything, they have a monopoly on that medicine and they charge monopoly prices. But they just decide we're not going to market that or produce that to be sold in Africa. Why not? Well, it's just, they, you know, the market won't bear the profit margins we need to see there. And then why not let somebody else produce it in Africa then? Why not let the Indians produce the generic version of it? Hell no. And they have so much influence over trade agreements and patent agreements that they're able to do things like that and actually let people die in order to enhance their profits. And the way they abuse science is just staggering. For example, there was a bunch of anti-inflammatory drugs, and I don't know the names of all of them, but one of the big sellers was the patent was expiring. So what they do is they tweak the molecule a little bit and come up with a new version. And the new version was Vioxx. And then they just market like heck to get that to be the prescription of choice. And they've got another 20 years of a monopoly.
You know what they call that, Bob? Ken? They call it
Me Too drugs. Vioxx was the drug that she mentioned as an example. In other words, when your patent's about to expire, you create another drug that's about the same, which gives you another 20-year patent. Well, in the case of Vioxx, when they did clinical trials on it, they had a lot of problems and they withheld that information. And after about 27,000 people died of heart attacks from taking this Vioxx, they finally were forced to take it off the market, and they were fined, and the fine was less than the profits they made on the drug. And it points out how they spend most of their money on making Me Too drugs, marketing those drugs, and on lobbying our politicians. And there are laws that say when you do clinical trials, you're supposed to make the data public. They just conveniently ignore that. If you look at where they focus their spending, it's always where the big money is: hair loss, erectile dysfunction, things like that. And you know, they spend about 1% of their research dollars on killer diseases like tuberculosis, malaria, leprosy, sleeping sickness, all of those diseases, because there's no profits there. They've done things like, by the way, the government finance is a big part of all of that research too. But they've actually had drug companies, when the NIH funded some research and somebody comes out with a new molecule that looks promising, there have actually been drug companies that have bought the patent and then just didn't do anything with it because they didn't want the drug to come out because it would compete with something they already had. And it just shows how, you know, the name of the game in lots of industries is to buy influence in Washington and then use that influence to create a market that has no resemblance to free market or capitalism or anything else for that matter. It's just just a set of rules made up that are made up by the people that will benefit from those rules.
Ken, they call that the minimal patentable difference.
The minimal what?
Patentable difference. Patent. The minimal patentable difference. It's the smallest difference that you can have from an existing drug, so that you.
Yeah. And they also invent diseases. They'll sponsor conferences and say, well, we make a lot of money off of say male sexual dysfunction. So we got to define a new condition called female sexual dysfunction. And here are the symptoms. And it's a checklist, and about anybody who's a female would meet at least one of the criteria, and that says that's all you need. And then you can sell them drugs.
Well, that's what they like the restless leg syndrome. You heard about that one?
Yeah.
Anyway.
And the other thing that we allow to happen is there's a private organization, I can't remember the name of it, that trains doctors. It keeps them up to date by training them. That organization has the authority to authorize off-label use of drugs. So, you may come out with a drug that's designed to prevent depression or something. They say, it's also good for these other diseases. And once they get it on that list, then the doctors who prescribe it are not held accountable. I mean, and also once it gets on that list, then Medicare and Medicaid have to pay for those prescriptions, even though they've never been approved in clinical trial. And the other thing is the agencies worldwide that approve drugs, like the FDA, are largely supported by the drug companies, because they get this accelerated approval of a drug, and they have to pay more money to get that. And so the FDA, a lot of the people that they employ are paid under this accelerated approval program. And the idea there is that this drug is so good and so important, it's important to rush it into use. And the rules say that once it's in use, the people who use it are just like a continuation of the clinical trials, and it's supposed to be monitored and all that, but they conveniently neglect to ever do that. So this woman's been on this soapbox since about 2009, but all of a sudden now she's saying, I support vaccinations and everything, but you just can't say all vaccinations are good and we ought to require them. She said some of the flu vaccines have been almost totally worthless, but it's not stopped us from marketing them. And she just thinks it's a dangerous precedent to say you have to have a vaccine.
And let me mention one thing. The food, many years ago, people could claim anything for a medicine, okay? And so you could claim whatever you wanted for a medicine. You put some in the bottle and you could say cure or whatever,
Yeah. But now you can stop all arguments. You just say, oh, the science is clear on this, and the discussion.
Well, let me
and the science wasn't clear on Vioxx, and the science wasn't clear on the opioids that they put on the market. But there was never that discussion allowed to happen.
Okay, then let me mention one thing. One of the things that these people did is when they got the Food and Drug Administration, they have a criteria, which is that you have to prove that your drug is better than placebo.
Yeah, well, that's another thing.
You don't require, let me just mention, you don't require to prove that it is actually better than an existing drug.
Yeah. And you know how that played out? And there was a drug, I think it was AZT or something, that you gave to pregnant women to reduce the transmission of AIDS to the baby. And they did clinical trials in Africa. The drug companies like to use places like that for their trials. They did 5 different clinical trials involving about 30,000 women, testing new drugs to prevent transmission of AIDS to the baby. And rather than using the ACT as the benchmark or their control group, the control group got a sugar pill. So they intentionally had their control group not getting the protection that was already available. I mean, that to me sounds like the Tuskegee trials.
Okay, just one comment about, I think you have given a great example of the main point of evil geniuses and dark money. That the big point is that these billionaires, millionaires, basically figured out a way of changing regulation and all that, but they not only did that in drugs, but they did it all over the place.
Yes.
Okay, they did it all over the place, and that is just one egregious example, but they did that in many, many, many areas, okay?
Yeah, it's like the head regulator in the FDA, the head of FDA or the head of whatever agency you're talking about has to be approved by these people that are pulling the strings of the politicians.
And people, the people who actually are in the regulating agencies, in about 6 months, they ended up working for the companies.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let me mention a couple of things. One of the things that is really important in this book, even though I didn't read it, I read a really good review of it, but I'm going to go ahead and emphasize dark money. The big deal about farming and dark money that I thought it was really incredible is how organized are those plutocrats. The level of organization and the human, the educated people in the United States have been conditioned when something looks like it's very well organized, they say, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. But if you look at dark money, the reason this is not a conspiracy is because if you read a lot, you can find out what they're doing, but nobody reads. So,
Yes.
For practical purposes, it is a conspiracy. The Koch brothers get together in this place and nobody can be there. They sweep the rooms for microphones and all that, and some things are leaked out. But anyway, the big deal about big money is how in the 80s or something, there was something called the Powell memo. And they said, all of a sudden, what is going on in the United States, there is an attack on capital. And if we don't work on it, we're going to, and one of the people who was an instigator of that was Hayek, Frederick Hayek, anyway, and they decided to organize, and they came up with things like the think tanks. Basically, one of the things that they said was that academia was anti-business. So they came up with this how do you call that? This think tanks, and all of a sudden they got these people, and they call them fellows. And they exploited the fact that American journalism thinks that they're doing a good job if they get 2 sides. So there's the scientist that said this drug is a piece of shit, and they got one of these fellows. And in the article that we were supposed to read today, it's right there. One of the think tanks have hired one of these theologians, Catholic theologians, that said the right way to look at Catholicism is the way the billionaires think of it. Does that make sense? So anyway, they're very organized. And the other thing that they're organized is what is called controlling the message.
Right.
Controlling the message. They actually, it is unbelievable how when something happens like Black Lives, not Black Lives Matter, something like uh, the uh, the Tea Party and all that, they immediately go out there. They have these institutions immediately to create a message to feed to those people through radio and Fox News and all kinds of things like that. And one of the things that really shocked me in Dark Money is that they actually have grants. If you are a policeman and you want to get this bullshit into your police union, you can write a grant. You say, I want to go ahead and have a newsletter for policemen that is going to emphasize their point, and they fund it. So, and they also had the plan to rattle people along race. You know, they figured they couldn't give them anything. So, well, you know, I mean, for many, many years in the South, Martin Luther King said, and other people have said, they didn't give the ruling class, they didn't give anything to poor whites. The only thing they gave poor whites is a sense that they were better than the black man. And they did more of that. So they did all these things that we're seeing right now about, what McDonald, what is the name, McDonald is doing and all that. There's all this idea of rattling people around wedge issues so that they don't get organized and challenge the plutocrats. And the big deal is about the details. Dark Money has all the details. It's one of the best. It was one of the 10 best books of the year. And it was very impeccably well researched about how these people, how well organized these people, to the point that if you talk to people and tell them about it, the first thing they tell you is, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. Because it's so well organized of a conspiracy that people, when you tell them how they, how organized they are, people refuse to believe it, because part of the self-image of the educated is that they don't believe in conspiracy theories. So that basically is the summary of Dark Money. Kendris, are you still there? Well, anyway, do we want to go to the article about Catholicism?
I got to go, Ramon, so maybe we need to put that to next week.
Yeah, that would be great to have it at the same time that Bob is going to discuss the two movies,
Okay, and what article is that?
How big money is dividing American Catholicism. It was an article that Raymond forwarded from, the article was from the New Republic, March 9th, 2021.
Yeah, okay.
Do you have it, Ken?
I got to go, guys. We got company that just came in.
All right, Ken, good to see you. Have a great
All right, we'll see you.
Hey, Kendris, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
So were you able to hear some of what we said?
Yeah, for sure. I love those articles, and it really speaks to some of the work that we do as nonprofits. And, I'm new to the executive director role, but I'm quickly learning that you have to win friends and gain influence. And a lot of that is meeting with people, sending letters to legislators to get things done. That's how we work. That's how everything works. And a lot of these grants, if you even look at the state legislature, the budget that was just approved, a lot of them are just little like mom and pop things, but they make a huge difference in the lives of nonprofits. So yeah, I love that Dark Money article. And, the Dark Money book, I want to read that, but the Evil Genius is a really good article too. So thank you for sharing that.
Okay, one of the things.
And the pharmaceutical companies and the tech media companies, they're all doing the same thing.
Yes.
Kendris, one of the things that I'm hoping that will happen out of these meetings and you participating here is that I hope that sometime there will be some way of coordinating. Ken is doing big things to help people, poor people in Tennessee, with education and training and all that. And I think there should be some kind of synergisms between what Breakthrough does and what he's doing. And how would be if you need labor in Breakthrough to actually figure out some kind of synergisms that can happen, I can be the labor. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that sounds good.
If you go ahead and meet with Ken or talk to Ken and come up with some kind of ideas and you need some labor to flesh them out, I can do that. And I don't want to be the leader at all, but I mean just secretarial, role, because I think there is a potential for using some of the training that Ken is talking about for people with, I don't know if you know that I actually place one guy, I got him an internship and he ended up with a job as a developer after many, many years. He couldn't work anywhere. And
Yeah, the programming guy, right? Who's done programming at first, and you
no,
did
I
some.
did it on my own. I did that one on my own. I met
Ah,
I met this guy and he was in his basement and he was good on technology and I got him an internship with somebody who I told him to have the guy work for him with no pay for a while to train him how to do things. And after the guy now is fully employed. Okay. Because I got him an internship with a guy without paying. Now I tried to do the same thing. I tried to do that with another guy, Joshua, who's kind of smart. And I said, I am willing to take the courses with you to kind of hold your hand and get you to learn to work on Python and all that. And the guy was not really motivated, but I'm sure there's a bunch of guys out there who are talented in technology that have Asperger's that could really benefit from what Ken is doing. You see what I'm saying?
yes.
Well, anyway, I think it is a good time to quit. Were you able to hear well or not? Hello?
She's muted again.
Okay, anyway, I'm going to put this today's meeting on a private link on YouTube so that Bobby and Chuck can actually listen to it, okay? Okay, Paul, how do you like the meeting today?
I thought it was good. I thought we covered a lot of different things. I think that in a lot of ways, if we look at in this past week, we look at Biden's speech, we look at the retort, the Republican retort, we can see a lot of elements of the same kind of promotion and messaging that are present in the idea of these books. And I think that we really may be at an inflection point. I think that Biden is getting a lot of very interesting advice from people that potentially could turn the table on the trend that's been in place since the late 70s or early 80s. I think it's kind of an interesting time, but I think it's who the ultimate question is who is better organized. And there was a couple of hits in that.
The Republicans are gambling.
Yeah.
Like gambling that they can keep the white poor, the poorly educated whites on their side by doing what they have done for 300 years, giving them nothing except the feeling that they're better than the black man. That's what I think.
Well, I mean, Anderson in his review of Evil Geniuses makes the point. Anderson argues that it's a moment of crisis on multiple vectors is precisely the kind of hour known throughout history to occasion great change, which is sort of what, when you think about what Biden has come out with in his speech, he highlighted that confluence of so many different crises at the same time. I think there's a possibility I think there's a possibility that this tendency towards wealth accumulation and bias and return to capital being significantly greater than return to labor in terms of the distribution of income. I think that it may be potentially revisable over the next couple of years to the benefit of so many people who are on the losing end of the deal right now. We'll see.
Okay, well, I think which is a good time to quit. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it was great. I think so.
Thanks for coming.
Yes.
I am really glad that you are actually participating, and I hope you're enjoying it and getting.
Yeah, definitely.
All
right. Y'all have a great week.
Bye.
All right,
Bye.
Here's a